It's time for lunch and whatnot.
Let's get to what we were going to call the main course, right?
Not the salmon? We already had that?
Yeah, after the salmon.
Oh.
The whatnot part.
Okay.
Where we, try to just kind of dig into some questions. We like to put some feelers out there before the show. And we put some feelers out, asked, what you guys want to talk about, questions you have. And, some of the things we saw in those questions a lot of them were related to time.
Yes.
The subject of time. So the theme of today's show, the main course, is going to be about time. I don't know if you guys have a couple of questions you want to throw to us around that subject.
We can go to our producer, see if Lindsay has a question for us.
All right, question number 1. Can you talk about how time and the value you place on time has influenced Symmetry and Quility? Okay.
Can you talk about how time and the value you place on time has influenced?
That was a really good question. We'll be glad to answer that.
How did time come about? What were we thinking about with time when it came to developing Symmetry and the systems and Quility, right?
Yeah. So let's get into some of that.
Yeah. Well, I think when most people are starting a business or they're entering a career, the obvious focus is money and how can I make more money? And if you talk to most business owners, they'll tell you that there's a lot more importance around the time aspect. And just kind of thinking about last night, and it's really kind of sad to think of it this way, but what is the most important thing that people want? Well, if you're sick, you want more time.
Yep.
Right? What do we take away from people if they do something really bad? What's the ultimate punishment?
You go to jail.
You go to jail.
Yep.
You lose time, right? And so when we were wanting to start the company, we knew that what we wanted was probably what most people wanted.
That's right.
And it's a combination of both of those things, but we all know people that have great jobs and make a ton of money, and they just seem miserable. They don't have much time to enjoy it.
Yeah, that was it. And that's, in a way, kind of, what sparked us to start this company. And so it is an important subject. I think it's a good one to start with. When we started this company, we really took kind of a big step back. Stephen Covey has a good quote, something to the nature of begin with the end in mind. And I think that's such a healthy kind of question for everyone to ask themselves before they get into something around work. Mm-hmm. And we did that. We sat down and we said, what is the end result we're really trying to go for? And let's start with that and then work backwards. Too many times I think people kind of go down the road thinking they know what the end result is that they're going for, and not really realizing that's not really in the end what's going to create a certain level of happiness and fulfillment and contentment. And so they start chasing the wrong things. And for us, it was like, let's establish the end first. The end, like Brandon said, for us was we wanted to make money, but we also didn't want to trade that money all the time for time. We didn't want to always trade our time for money. We wanted a healthy balance of money and time.
Yep.
And that's a big and, right?
Absolutely.
Because what most people do, because they don't understand how money works, is they start trading money for time. And if you're always trading one for the other, how do you ever really kind of get both? Mm-hmm. And like you said, we just kind of took a hunch with Symmetry and said, chances are, if money and time, from a very broad sense, is what we're driving for when we get up and we go to work every day, chances are it's probably what most people want too, mm-hmm. or at least the majority.
If they would be educated to know that that's even a possibility, and that's part of the biggest
tricky
problem,
part, right? And so that, there's been a couple books I think that have shaped certainly my outlook on work and money, and I think for both of us have shaped really the company. One of those books was an educational book around money and time, and I think we have a graphic. I want to show it in a second, but it's really around Kiyosaki's book, Cash Flow Quadrant. That book, and there was a few others. I think when we probably read that book about the same time, completely shifted the way I thought about work and what I was actually going for. And I see heads nodding out there too. It's probably a book that should be taught in school at some point.
Absolutely.
How money works, the different types of money, how it's related to your time, how it's related to that balance. And so if we have that graphic, let's show it, because I think it's important to kind of break it down.
Yeah, let me say this too. We actually used this as a big part of the way that we were building the company from an actual hands-on recruiting standpoint. Yeah. Like every Friday, we would bring in new recruits to the home office. Edward Pritchett was one of those. Brian Delaney were one of those. Matt and Brad Smith eventually were one of those as well, where not only would we break down the business and how the business works, but we'd actually take 15 to 20 minutes to educate people on this, which is arguably the most important thing. And maybe we should take a little responsibility that we haven't broken this down and talked about it quite enough, because I think everyone needs to not only understand this to determine where they're going and what they're looking to accomplish, but also how to teach it. Because if you want to really explain symmetry, the value of symmetry, who we are, what we actually do,
it's an important component.
This is the most important part of it. Break this down.
So the basics of it, and Kiyosaki, there's so many people that teach this really well. And if you have not read Cash Flow Quadrant, I would highly recommend reading that book. The fundamental difference in the left side of this quadrant and the right is the left side is linear income, or what we usually just refer to as temporary. The right side is leveraged and residual income, or another way to say it is permanent. So Brandon, if the left side is temporary and the right side is permanent, and you had the choice, which would you choose every single time? Would you rather earn your money in a temporary fashion, meaning if I do something once, I get paid once, or in a permanent fashion where I do something once and I continue to generate income from that? Which would you choose?
You're always going to choose the right
Which would
side.
you guys choose? Like, if you poll, probably not 100% of the audience is going to say, I would rather have my income earned on the right side. And the question I would have is, why is it that 98% of the country earns pretty much 100% of their income on the left? And there's a lot of reasons why, and we don't want to get into it today, but I think education, we talked about that, is certainly one of them. I've read this book. I was never shown this in school, where money come from and what different types of money, right? So I think education is certainly a big part of it, but there's certainly things also that keep people from moving over to the right side. Risk, or perceived risk, is one of them. Maybe investment, that kind of thing, to get to play on the right side. But again, left side is temporary, right side is permanent. And so the beautiful part about symmetry and what we do is we all start on the left side of the quadrant in the self-employed quadrant, right? And I can't think, I'm not trying to bash the S quadrant here, because the S quadrant is our ATM. You know, that's where we go out and we generate the money that we need to potentially transfer into the right side of the business, the right side of that quadrant. And I can't think of a better self-employed way to go out there and earn a living than to do what we do with our insurance products.
Absolutely. I don't think we offer it enough times to people that are maybe trying to bridge away from the E quadrant, right, to get down to the S quadrant. So it's the perfect way to move from one to the other, because I can do it part-time. I can get started if I need to replace $20,000 or $30,000 of income. I can do that fairly simply in the self-employed quadrant. That would maybe give me enough confidence to be able to take that leap.
That's right. But again, the fundamental difference on the right side is that it's permanent income. And the reason why it's permanent is because of leverage. And so there's two ways that you have leverage on the right side of the quadrant. As you can see on the business owner side, what you're leveraging is time. You're leveraging other people's time. On the investor side, you're leveraging your money. Your money is working for you, okay? The business owner side, when you think about that leverage, you know, a lot of people will say, well, there's only 40 hours in a week. If you're a business owner and you have 10 people working with you and they're all putting in, let's call it 8 hours a day, there's no longer just 8 hours in a day. There's 80 hours in a day outside of my 8 hours. The leverage is such an important component. Leverage is the way you move from temporary income to permanent income. Okay? And so when we talk about symmetry and everything that we kind of do behind the scenes with symmetry, we always have this in mind, because what we want for our people, again, is what we wanted, which was the ability for our income not to always be tied to our feet. So let's create an actual system that allows people to bridge from the left to the right. So a lot of times people say, what is symmetry? Is it an insurance agent? I think symmetry in its purest form is a business system. The product we sell is insurance, but symmetry is a system that you can leverage to cross. Show the next slide, if you will, because this kind of shows you. Symmetry is really just a bridge that allows you to move from the left side of the quadrant to the right, if you want. If you want to stay in the self-employed quadrant, there's certainly ways you can earn a great income as an employee or as a self-employed person.
Absolutely.
Invest the surplus into the I quadrant and move to the right. So totally fair game there too, but symmetry from an agent standpoint really is about showing you how to make a very good income in the S quadrant and then giving you a system to leverage. And again, on the left side, you say save yourself stress, time, energy, money. All of the things that go into hiring people and getting people to a point where they can sell insurance and earn a decent income. There's a lot that goes into that. Most of that's on the right side here.
Yep.
You have to have the main ingredients first of all, and the first few things are the main ingredients. We talk about the Pareto principle, right? 80-20. 20% of my activity is going to produce 80% of the results in my bank account. So the first thing we did when we started Symmetry is we said, what are the 20%? What's the 20% for us? What is it that we're doing with that 20% of our time that's actually producing 80% of our income? And it was sitting in front of clients, and it was recruiting. Those were the two main activities. Mm-hmm. And so there's certain ingredients that are involved to make sure that you guys can do that most of the time. We just said we want to flip the equation. Instead of you spending 20% of your time on the 80% of the result stuff, let's get it to the point where you can spend most of your time, if not all of your time, on that high net worth activity. And that's why you got to have, it's like baking a cake, right?
Yep.
If you're going to go out and sell a lot of insurance, you need some of the basics. You need top rated carriers, and you need a bunch of them. You can't just have one or two. I can't sit in front of a client and say I have the best thing for them when I'm only selling one or two companies. I need a variety. I need some things. It can't be a one size fits all type thing. So we need access to top rated carriers and contracts, proprietary products within that. We need a bonus program. There's got to be a certain level of motivation when I hire an agent, because if not, I've got to create some of that internal motivation. But since Symmetry comes in and says, here's the bonus program, all of you guys get to leverage that. It doesn't cost you money, but that creates a lot of movement, right? Same thing with some of these other things. Passive income with QMS.
Yeah, that's a big
Right?
one. So many of the things that we've tried to roll out with the evolution of your company have all centered around time and how to create time. So it's a simple question, right? If you could make systematized income of $50,000 by doing next to nothing,
Yep.
or you could have to do everything to make $100,000, which would you choose? Some people say, I have more time.
Mm-hmm.
I like to work a lot. I want to do this to make all of it. I like to say, if it's systematized, I'll take half, because that means it's duplicatable. And if it's
Absolutely,
duplicatable, give me a couple of months, and while you're working your butt off to make the 100, I'll be
Yep.
working on the systems to make 150.
That's right. Incentive trips, conferences, training, culture and community. Think
That's a big
about
one.
think about you having that system to leverage around that, and how hard that is to create. And we know, staring at some of you guys that helped us start the company, it's incredibly hard to create a community and a culture that's actually attractive. And when you're talking about leveraging other people's time and having a system to do that, recruiting is just very simply an attraction, right? Hiring is an attraction. I need to attract people to me, but also, more importantly, the company. And I think that's sometimes overlooked as such an important part of the system, is the culture and community aspect. What about when I onboard people, the ability to actually have a system, a universal system that gets them making money, so that I'm not having to spend time each and every time with one of them training them on how to either sell a policy or, more importantly, how to develop as a leader. That's some work, and that's why you see Impact, Thrive, Connect. That's our leadership development platform that everyone gets to leverage to actually help you guys bring people up as leaders in the company, right? Now, the question I would have if I'm outside listening in is like, well, that all sounds good, but is it working? And we can confidently say it's working. Yesterday we had our national call. We introduced 4 new agency owners.
Yeah.
So we introduced 4. Just if you don't know what agency owner is with us, that's $50,000 a month at a minimum of production in the insurance space. Which, if you boil that down, it's probably around $50,000 of leveraged passive income annually at a very minimum. That's what it takes to become an agency owner with us. So, in 11 years, what we're seeing, I don't know how long it took us to even have 10 agency owners, but right now we're averaging
4 years. Every
single week we promote a new agency owner in our company. It's probably more like 1.3. Last month, not October, the month before that, I think it was 8 or 9 agency owners that we promoted.
This is a big month.
And historically, when we look back at the growth trends also, the majority of our agency owners show year-over-year growth. So when we talk about Symmetry being that bridge, it is that. And a lot of people are crossing that bridge. And as we evolve as a company, we're going to continue to lean in and invest in the system to make sure that bridge is paved as smoothly as possible. And, the end result being what we're all driving for, which is a balance of money and time.
Yeah, and Symmetry is really, when you really think about it, not only is it in that B quadrant, but it's also in the investor quadrant. Because yes, you're a business owner, but so many of them are investing back into things within Symmetry.
Yep.
And we always tell people, because a lot of agents and agency owners come in and they're making way more money than they ever thought possible,
Yep.
and so they start dabbling in kind of other things or investing in other things, and that's, you can certainly do that. You're going to be hard pressed to find something that yields the return that investing in a Symmetry, kind of creating a base shop, creating a new agency owner, investing in your own business. You're not going to find anything
Never
that
seen
matches
anything
that.
like it. Yeah.
No.
But congrats to all the new agency owners this past month.
Yeah.
Four brand new ones, all getting a taste of that passive income. And the goal is we want to show you that, but then we want you to leverage that system and show others how to do that. And when you do that, then the return is also there.
Absolutely.
I
think there was another great question that we wanted to come back to
Yep.
on this too.
Okay,
Lindsay.
do I say it again?
Yeah,
On time?
it was on time. Yep.
I'm newer to the business, so I'm trying to divide my time between building an agency and being in the field. How did you guys manage your time when you were starting out?
How do you manage your time better when you're kind of riding 2 horses
That's a tricky one.
a
Yeah.
little bit, right? You're in the field. You're trying to build an agency, which takes a lot of coaching, mentoring, recruiting,
Yeah.
training. You're in the field, which takes a lot of dialing. You need to be booking appointments. You need to be sitting with clients. You need to make sure those clients are protected.
Yep.
Those policies are
That's a
getting
lot.
approved. And I think, I'll start off by saying one of the things that we see probably too often is people pulling away from their, what we kind of refer to as your ATM to build your business, which is being in the field. People pulling away from that a little too quickly, right? They start making
Yep.
a great income on the business side, passive income from their agency, but they kind of stifle their growth because pulling out of the field a little too early means that I can't then reinvest in more infrastructure,
Yep.
more staff, more
Yep.
any of the things that are really going to help me leverage the system.
Yeah.
So
That's a good one.
What's a good tip?
I think it starts with your schedule, and having a schedule. I struggle with that, when I first got into this business because I was a plumber's assistant and I had a place to show up to every day. I was 9 to 5 and
Crappy places to show up to. every day.
yeah, there was a lot of that
Okay.
too, for sure.
Yeah.
But, I'd never had quote unquote freedom of schedule. And it was tricky for me. I remember my first week out, I sat in front of a bunch of appointments and made $2,400. and it was about maybe 20 hours worth of work. Made some phone calls, booked some appointments, went out and sat with the families, made $2,400.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, man, if I can do that every week, that's going to be $100,000 my first year. And the second week I went out, goose egg. And if I really kind of think about it,
did you actually go out? And
probably
get
not.
goose egg?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was my schedule. You know, I said I was working, but I really wasn't. I wasn't used to kind of that discipline for myself. And I think a lot of agents struggle with that because, you know, you're in the S quadrant. You know, you're self-employed when you start here, and if you don't have that ability to kind of discipline yourself, then what's that saying? You live with the pain of discipline or the pain of regret.
Yeah.
I lived with the pain of regret that second week with a zero. Thankfully, I kind of learned through, you know, mentors in the business, through books, like the importance of, like, man, you don't wake up on a Monday morning and ask, what am I doing today?
No,
you don't wake up any day,
you
right?
don't wake up any morning not knowing what you're going to do. But, you know, there's certain pieces of the business that have to be kind of sacred times, right? Like, nothing's going to get in the way of me reaching out and calling my leads, you know, and if I'm going to put in 250 to 500 dials, depending on how many leads I have, depending on how many appointments I want to run, depending on how many people I want to help, et cetera, then I have to know very clearly when are my times that I'm making those dials, when are my times that I'm talking virtually to the clients to sell them, when are my times that I'm going to be looking at my pending business, and this is assuming that it's all on me, right? When am I going to be recruiting agents? When am I going to be, one of the most important things, when am I going to be working on myself? And so one of the things that we did early on is we would just take a calendar, and it would say Sunday to Saturday, and we would highlight in exactly what times we're going to be doing what things.
Non-negotiables.
We had the non-negotiables like conference calls. We started with, I need to plug in to this weekly meeting. I need to plug into this conference call or these conference calls. Those are highlighted in a certain color. I'm going to be making my dials at this time. Meredith and I would make our dials every Saturday morning. Well, I would start Thursday night, and I would be running appointments Monday, Tuesday. This is when we were in the field. And then she and I were both in the office Saturday mornings, no matter what, from 9 o'clock to noon. And if I had to keep going past noon to get my 15 appointments, I had to keep going past noon to get my 15 appointments, right? But we weren't taking phone calls to do other things. We weren't, you know, it didn't matter where we were. If we were going to a wedding, if we were going to do something else, those were our times that we were making dials.
And that's tricky, too. I remember hiring an agent very early on in this business. And he did fairly well, and then he would struggle for a little bit. And I remember talking to him one time, and I said, you know, I was trying to diagnose what was going on, and I remember him telling me earlier that he never missed a day of work at his previous employer. He had never missed a day in like 10 years.
Like perfect.
And he worked like 6 days a week, like long hours, never missed a day. And I remember going, take me back to that, right? Like, you never missed a day in 10 years, but you missed a week here because I can't remember what the excuse was. It was a pretty good one, actually.
Sure.
And I was like, that's kind of understandable.
Yeah.
But nothing like that happened in the 10 years that you worked for that company, and you never missed a day. You never had a sickness in the family that you had to kind of tend to. Like, he was like, man, I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
Like, if you wouldn't do it at a job, then you can't do it here. Freedom is an earned thing. You have to put in the time. And what you'll learn is freedom is in the schedule. When you have a schedule and you stick to it and you put the things in there that are important to you as non-negotiables, not only the things that make you money, but the things that are important to you, then there is freedom in that.
Yeah, because we're creating routines. We as humans love routines, which means that we're creating positive habits, which means that we can yield the same result because we're going to have consistency in our performance week after week and really hour after hour. I should know, and the guys that are on the call with us or on the webinar with us right now, I guarantee you, if you were to look at their calendars, they know exactly what's going on
to the 15 minutes.
To the 15-minute mark, right? And the people that don't, you can always kind of tell what's going on because they seem to always be on a little bit of an emotional roller coaster. Like, hey, I got paid, and then, oh no, I got charged back. Hey, I got paid. And that's the worst thing possible. Like, you need, if you get consistency in performance, you'll have consistency in your emotional stability. And if you want to build a business, or even if you want to be a good salesperson, you better have consistency in your emotional stability.
That's right.
If you don't have that,
It's gonna be
you're
tough
going to
road.
get
It's
nowhere.
not going to be fun. You
No.
can make $100,000 a year, and the emotional toll it can take on you because of the way you earn that 100,000 can be a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather earn 50 or 40 or whatever it is with some consistency than be on that roller coaster, because what I noticed about my roller coaster journey when I first started, when I was trying to manage that discipline, was my emotions were attached to it.
Yep.
Right? And it was a vicious cycle because I would let my bank account dictate my activity level.
Yep.
And therefore it would kind of come back, and that would affect my emotions. And the problem with that is when you're not feeling great, that's not when you want to go out and be trying to help people.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle.
Like, I'm a better salesperson when I have money in the bank, and I have money in the bank because I'm consistent. So consistency breeds emotional intelligence, or not emotional intelligence, emotional stability. Emotional stability gives you more sales, right? It's a cycle. So
Yep.
I think another healthy habit that we did, and we kind of talked about earlier, the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, is just the exercise of thinking about what are the things that are important that you do that earn you the most amount of money, and what are all the other things that get in your way of doing just those activities. And I can remember sitting down with Sarah very early on and saying, okay, what am I really good at that actually makes us money? And again, for a lot of people listening in, it's probably sales. It's probably your ability to connect with people, get in front of people, relationships. If you're building a business, it's recruiting, it's interviewing, it's leadership development. And how can we just get me to do that with all of my time? Mm-hmm. It's not that those other, so we kind of maybe categorize them as administrative sometimes. Those things are just as important. They have to get done. Your business will wreck without them. But is there a way that my spouse or the cash flow that I'm creating from being consistent, I can actually bring an assistant in and bring someone in to help me with those things to drive that hourly net worth up? Because I think about that a lot. I think about, man, we all have the same amount of time in a day, right? Mm-hmm. Edward Pritchett's got the same amount of time as the agent that was just hired, last week. What is Edward doing with his time? And most of it is like the time he's spending is on those high hourly net worth stuff. He's figured out how to kind of ditch the rest of it.
Yep.
And delegate and get it off the plate. And that comes full circle back to your point about our philosophy and our style when we were building Symmetry was to be very heavy in the field and pay for the system, pay for the recruiting, pay for a staff person to help us get interviews. Because the trick to time management too, especially when it comes to building a business, because planning that B quadrant is tough, because when you really think about it, it's not instant.
Absolutely,
you're putting in work into tomorrow.
You have to have a lot of faith.
It's a faith-based work in that I'm putting work in today that I don't really see the return for maybe 120 days out. And so what we had to learn to do was take that excess cash flow and kind of back ourselves into a corner in the way of like, man, I have an assistant now. And that assistant has a marketing budget of $1,500 a month. And that $1,500 a month is making the phone ring and making the emails light up for possible interviews. Now I have 8 interviews scheduled, every single day, 3 days in a row. And it would have been easier for me just to go play golf or ride my bike. But we kind of call that stuff forced commitment. Yeah. You make the investment, you create some structure around it, back yourself into a corner to make sure that you're spending a certain portion of your week working on the left side of that quadrant we just talked about.
Yeah.
So the left? No, sorry, the right side of that quadrant. Because if you spend all your time working on the left side of that quadrant, the income won't come on the right. You have to start putting in X amount of hours a week onto the right side of that quadrant, the permanent side. And if you do that long enough, pretty soon you'll be like some of these guys I'm looking at right here, where now 100% of their income comes on that right side of that quadrant. But it's about time management.
Yeah, I think of Marshall Whalen, and a lot of times I'll call Marshall and he's like out on his boat.
Yep.
And whether it be FaceTiming or I can hear him,
yeah.
And he's done so much work on the front end to know that where his time is best spent right now
yep.
is coaching, mentoring, building relationships. The beauty of it is You can do that on a boat, can't you, Marshall? You can do that anywhere you want to, buddy. It's not like you're out there having to book appointments. But I think where people kind of struggle with this is we've talked about pulling out of the field a little bit too early, or there's some pitfalls, right? They maybe come off of what they were doing. They were doing $10,000 a week in production. Now they're doing $5,000 a week in production. They haven't taken the time to either hire a staff person or create some infrastructure and some systems, or even worse, they hire staff people, but they don't take the time to train them and get them good at what they're doing, right? So if you don't have a staff person, we always say that you are, and the problem with that is that as salespeople, we're usually not good at that kind of work. And so what ends up happening is we're taking away from the profitable activities that you're talking about. We're doing things that we're not good at and that are also not making us money. So stay in the field, write $10,000 a week in production, hire 2 or 3 people, or if you have a spouse, get them in the business. That's a dangerous one for some people too, right? Hire someone that can do the things that you're not good at doing, or that you don't want to do, or that are not yielding the result that you needed to yield, right? And then take the time to train those people to be you, to be better than you. And then, you can fund all of that nowadays just by sitting in your house on Zoom meetings, helping clients.
I don't know if it sounds profound to you guys, or if it sounds fairly basic. It sounds kind of basic, but maybe it's not, and maybe we need to talk about it more, because
I think it's basic in terms of how we kind of teach with Symmetry and how we teach the leadership. This part is not basic, even though it should be. It's not basic because it hasn't been taught. So people don't really. It starts with understanding this, and then you can kind of build out all of your systems, all of your processes around how do I get to where I'm really wanting to go. And talk to your directs, talk to your managers, and
they know how to do it.
Stay in the arena is what I would say. Because the easiest thing that you can do as a leader is not start doing a lot of different things. It's you do the things that we've talked about. You teach other people that you hire how to do certain things, and then you lead by example. That's it. You're making money. You're leading by example. Watch your people start trying to chase you if you're staying at $10,000 a week in production, right?
That's it.
Or if you're recruiting 20 people a month, right? That's the best kind of leadership and teaching that you can do.
It's so true. And one last little thought on this too. Time management is not. When you think about how your brain goes about things, there's the logical side of time management. Then there's the emotional side that I think is often overlooked.
Oh, that's a good point.
And how important energy is and energy management is, which is why when Brandon was talking, when you were talking about, making sure that you put things in your schedule that are non-negotiable, that are for you.
Yes.
Like I'll go crazy if I don't get to ride my bike.
Absolutely.
Some people go crazy if they don't hit the gym, or they go crazy if they don't get to do what it is that kind of fills their cup. And I think we live in a world where that's often just kind of under respected, like the ability to recharge.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's so many companies out there that
it's frowned upon.
The last company we worked for,
absolutely,
you get made fun of for taking a vacation.
Well, the messaging for some reason now has to be how busy you are all the time. And I tell you this, I see more relationships ruined. I see more health situations declining because people feel like they have to be proving their worth every day by how busy they are. Like, it shouldn't be about. And you hear people all the time say, well, I'll never get outworked. I can outwork anybody. That's great. I think that's a great quality to have. But if that's your philosophy for a couple of years in a row, you know what that's going to create? You're going to get burned out pretty quick. Because you don't need to be the person that's always outworking everyone. You need to systematize things so that you can actually enjoy the fruits of your labor and what that work is actually going to create. So whenever I hear people, kind of talk about how busy they are, and it's usually not with Symmetry, it's friends or it's other people. I think there's value in being busy. We're all busy. There's good things, but what are you busy doing? Because you know what, you got to be intentional to work on your relationships. If you want a healthy marriage, then you should probably work on those things, and that doesn't just happen. right? If you want to be a good father, you got to schedule those things in because it doesn't just happen. If you want to be a healthy individual, emotionally, physically, you better schedule those things in because they're not going to just happen. And then what will happen if you're not intentional about all those things is you'll be very successfully financially, and then one day you'll look around and you got nobody to share it with. No family, no health, you haven't enjoyed it. What is that really worth? That's why you got to move from S to B to I, and that's what symmetry is.
That's right. It's about protecting that. It's about protecting your time and your energy. You know, and man, how are you showing up for people? And in a people business like this, if there ever was a people business, we're in it, right?
That's right.
But between the amount of people we sit in front of to help them with insurance, the amount of people we're bringing on board with this company, it is a people business. And you gotta, energy management is probably as important as time management. So
good stuff. Good breakdown
on time management.
I think I grew up.
Let's talk about maybe why time has been such an important topic of symmetry.
Well, you know, I grew up, thankfully, with my mother beating some things into my head.
What is a flow hack, and what are you trying to accomplish with one of your hacks?
Well, I like to save time.
I know you well enough, Flo, to know that it's not just about saving time. What else?
Well, I like to save money too.
Okay.
There you go. Is that what you were wanting?
We like that combo. Time
Yeah.
and
The perfect combo.
that's
Flo.
good, Flo.
Yeah. All right. So
Let's do it.
our
Let's do
first,
one.
let's get into this. Our first hack, maybe should be what you drinking there. What you sipping on?
Well, this is the peach tea, Crystal Light, Country Good, Weilers, whatever. little powders, and
With it.
I've got some peach vodka.
Oh.
And
That's
I
what-
have introduced some other people to the peach tea and peach vodka,
That's
and
what we call around here a floatini, right? Oh,
Good flavors.
all right. So one of your favorite hacks is we don't want to kind of give away the hack, but it kind of involves what you do with your leftovers and
It's a good one.
your hair. How are those two things coming together to create a flow hack?
well, I discovered a good while ago these little shower caps. I realized that it had pretty good elastic, and so I started putting it over a bowl, or I just thought it was real quick and real easy.
It's pretty genius
I like it. It's reusable.
because
Yeah.
saran wrap is so annoying.
I just got this little thing right over the plate. I didn't have to
Hold that up.
change it.
See that?
I didn't have to change it into a gallon bag
Hold
type
that up.
thing.
Oh, you got to show it to us. Hold it up so we can see it.
Now that's just paper towel. It's got a pretty plate.
Oh, look at there. Oh, it is a
Yeah.
pretty plate.
Man,
Yeah.
time and money right there.
We'll have to get some more flow hacks.
She's
because
got a bank of them.
Oh, she's got a whole bank of them. This started with you came over for dinner, I don't know, 3-4 weeks ago, and Flo was there, and
We started going, man.
as Flo is known to do, she had a few floatinis, and we started grilling her on like time and money and flow hacks, and man, she just started
Got some good ones.
she started spitting them out. I know that some people are going to be concerned about the shower cap thing. I will say that she does not use the shower caps on her hair and then use those again for the food.
There comes a point where you can't be too efficient.
You can be too efficient, that's it. But I remember her saying, oh yeah, you can get these, you can get 15 of these if you're lucky, usually 10 of these at the dollar store.
For $1?
For $1 you can get 10 of them, and
That's a steal. I mean, it's definitely a good deal.
it's
And
great
that
too.
saran
If you're
wrap
lucky,
is
you can
annoying.
find 15. Who wants to use saran wrap? I don't know who invented that, but I want to punch them every time I'm...
Well, not just the saran wrap, the box that it comes in and how
Yeah,
you tear
gotta-
it.
Oh, you always break the end of the box, then you have to tear the
annoying.
stuff off.
But a shower cap
It's so
is
easy.
genius.
You know what else is
Thank us
genius?
later, guys.
You know what else is genius
Thank
about a shower cap is that, and I don't think we talked about this on the hack, you can actually see the leftover.
That was an important component.
Yes.
Flow explains that too, which is such a pain to go to your fridge and not know what's under that leftover that you had the night before that. I don't know what's in there. It's a mystery. I don't want to get it out and open it up and be like, no, I didn't want that.
Maybe it's been there for a few weeks.
I was looking for the pizza. With a shower cap, you see what's in there.
There's the pizza right there. I can see that.
Flow.
Oh, that's great.
So good.
Flow.
We're going to bring more flow hacks, hopefully.